We've all heard this narrative before. Many black men prefer white women or light-skinned black women over dark-skinned black women. This sentiment has been perpetuated in movies, TV shows, and music. Lil Wayne has been at the forefront for these views. In his song Right Above It, one of his lyrics stated, "Beautiful black woman, I bet that look better red," meaning a black woman would be more attractive if her complexion was lighter. Red or red bone is a term that originated in the South that describes a fair-skinned black woman. Colorism has been a major issue in the African American community. Colorism is prejudice or discrimination against individuals with a dark skin tone, typically among people of the same ethnic or racial group. Colorism doesn't just affect African Americans, it affects people all over the world. How could a concept so primitive become acceptable by so many? The short answer: white supremacy. Specifically for African Americans, the answer is slavery and the influence of the media. The impact of the transatlantic slave trade are still evident today in the African American community. Colorism has been drilled into the psyche of African Americans since they arrived to the United States. The Africans who were forcibly brought to America as slave labor had different physical attributes than their white capturers. They were demeaned for having a darker complexion, kinkier hair, and rounded features. Slave owners often gave preferential treatment to slaves with fairer skin because they had white blood. Plantation owners and staff often raped enslaved black women and children, creating lighter offspring with a looser hair texture. While slave owners did not recognize their mixed-race children as relatives, they gave them privileges that dark-skinned slaves could not enjoy, like jobs inside the plantation home. They often slept in nicer quarters and received better food. They were also auctioned at higher prices than dark-skinned slaves. All of the enslaved African Americans witnessed daily how dark skin was undesirable and fair skin was revered. This in turn affected how dark-skinned slaves viewed themselves and one another. They began to believe they were inferior to not only white people, but lighter-skinned black people as well. Black men have suffered tremendously at the hand of white supremacists. One way male slaves were kept in line was through acute violence and emasculating treatment. They were often beaten and raped in front of their wives and children. After slavery, employers preferred to hire light-skinned black people over dark-skinned black people. Many black people don't realize they perpetuate slave teachings that were unconsciously taught to them by parents and grandparents. Although many black people have awoken and reprogrammed their thinking, many have not. Dr. Joy DeGruy believes African Americans are suffering from what she calls post-traumatic slave syndrome. This is a condition that exists as a consequence of the multi-generational oppression of Africans and their descendants.
There's a kind of a fundamental basis for post-traumatic slave syndrome. How many of you are familiar with post-traumatic stress disorder? But when we start talking about chattel slavery, we're not talking about one trauma. We're not talking about a specific event. We're talking about generations of trauma with no intervention. After slavery was officially over, now you're free. Anybody remember any therapy then? We know it's been rough, it's been deep for you, it's been difficult. We're going to do a little group therapy. Anybody remember that? That would be no. Number 3, after slavery officially ended, both in the States, in the Caribbean, the British, do you remember whether or not trauma continued? Did the trauma continue for people of African descent? I need to know. Okay, so now let's do the math. Hundreds of years of trauma, no treatment. Freed, more trauma, no treatment. What do you do the math? Do you think there may be residual impacts of that trauma? Of course there is. It didn't end, friends, and it hasn't ended yet. Now, Johnny or Mary or Shaquisha did not have the original trauma, but what are they learning? This is called social learning theory. What am I normalizing? So what happens in your environment, you learn from the significant others in your environment. And if they're broken, guess what you're going to be? You're learning from broken people.
Many people use the word dark with disdain, or teaching their children concepts like marrying an individual with lighter skin so their baby won't be dark-skinned. People also use phrases like, she's too dark, or she's pretty for a dark-skinned girl. The inability to break the teachings of our ancestors, slave owners, is still deeply affecting Black men and women today. Black men long for approval from white society and, in particular, validation of their manhood. For Black men, the desire for social approval increases with the degree of economic and occupational success. Thusly, the desire to be treated and perceived as equal tends to intensify as the Black man attempts to validate himself by copying the white man in all spheres of life. Essentially, many Black men want exactly what the white man has to feel adequate, but yet the inferiority and inequality remains stamped upon his subconscious. Despite the reality that he will never be integrated, accommodated, or acculturated into this great white societal structure, he is now able to cope because he goes home to a symbolic representation of the white world, the white or biracial female. Obviously, the implications of low self-esteem and racial self-hatred cannot be overstated. Having been mistreated, marginalized, and outcast, after receiving his education, success, or becoming wealthy, he now feels that it is possible to join the same society that rejected him. This is the reason why many wealthy Black men and celebrities are disconnected from the Black community and the issues that affect them. All of their lives, Black men have been taught if it's white, it's right. Anything close to white or looks white is almost just as appealing. One reason why many Black men date Spanish women. Many Spanish women look and actually identify as Caucasian. Some men state they're like white women with Black girl bodies. Many Black women have begun to embrace their hair and African features on a large scale. Many Black men are still struggling to identify and reverse the self-hate caused by white supremacy, often to the point where they bash Black women for embracing their dark skin and kinky hair. Often Black men will say they just prefer fair-skinned women over dark-skinned women. It's simply what they're attracted to. But until they have sat down and recognized how white supremacy affects the world and analyzed how this could have affected their psyche, he can't say that for certain. We have all been affected by white supremacy, both Black and white people and every race in between. There are some Black men who say they don't date Black women because of their strong personalities and attitude, but they'll accept the same behavior from women of other races, often labeling a perceived negative attribute for a Black woman as something positive for a woman of another race. More often than not, the media will portray dark-skinned people to be unintelligent, violent, and unattractive, while fair-skinned individuals are portrayed in a positive light. If you grew up your entire life seeing fair-skinned women on TV and in magazines depicted as the beauty queen and princess, and many of the images of dark-skinned women are ratchet and impoverished, it will negatively shape your views of dark-skinned women. Racist film companies often produce Black films and TV that perpetuate this stereotype. Fox's Empire is no exception. Taraji P. Henson's character Cookie is stereotypically abrasive and gaudy in dress, while her lighter-complected rival is soft-spoken and conservatively dressed. This same dynamic is seen in the show Power. In many commercials and ads, the fair-skinned woman is usually the lead girl. In Coming to America, the character Lisa McDowell plays the love interest of Prince Akeem. She's smart, caring, and highly desired by the men in her life. Her dark-skinned sister Patrice is depicted as annoying, thirsty, and promiscuous. She's so desperate to get a man that she attempts to sleep with her sister's ex-boyfriend.
Lisa dumped me.
Oh, I know. You poor thing. The first thing we have to do is get you out of these wet clothes.
Lisa is a beautiful princess, while her sister was, well, a thought. These films plant seeds in our minds. On the 90s hit show Martin, Tashina Arnold's character Pam was the stereotypical, angry, manless, dark-skinned woman. Martin often referred to her as the ugly friend.
Girl, your hair's so nappy, Wilson couldn't pick it. Well, every man's not built like you, Pam. Come on. Need you to do what you do.
What?
Run men away.
Gina, on the other hand, played by Tisha Campbell, was classy, successful, and doted on by Martin. Quote-unquote ghetto women are usually played by dark-skinned black women, even in cartoons. On the animated show The Proud Family, Penny was the cute, preppy, light-skinned girl. Then there was Dejanay, a dark-skinned girl with blonde hair that was extremely aggressive and stereotypically ghetto.
Forget this. They got enough food for all of us. I'm going over there and get me some food. I'm hungry.
The Gross sisters were portrayed as angry, thieves, and bullies. They were illustrated as unattractive as possible. Some say it was to translate that they were so black that they appeared to be blue. Little black boys watch these shows and internalize these negative messages. When something's been drilled into your mind for so long, you believe it. I have hope the mentality of some African American men can be reversed. Black women, you know there is nothing wrong with you, but there is something wrong with the way some black men view you. Black men who carry prejudiced feelings against dark-skinned women are victims of white supremacy. Try to give them empathy instead of anger. That can be extremely difficult when they devalue black women the same way white supremacists do, but it's not impossible. My beautiful dark girls, you are black coffee with curves of sugar. You are a spoonful of chocolate. You are soul food. You are a wombed man, the rib of an African king, the golden crown of the cosmos. My hope is that all the skin tones, sandy, chocolate, mocha, they'll all be viewed as equally beautiful. But until then, we can all do our part in helping each other identify and heal from the post-effects of slavery and the ongoing effects of white supremacy. Look at those who are lost with love and understanding. With love, we can heal. With understanding, we can grow. Then together, our glow will shine so brightly that we can illuminate the world.